So in this video, we are going to talk about how to condition yourself to put in long miles. Let's check it out. What's going on YouTube? FXDLSBROOKLYN is back in the building. And this one was by request from a subscriber. Just saying, hey, FXDLSBROOKLYN. See you talking about doing Sturgis 2021. We see you've really put in the miles over the years. What are some tips for someone who's never done the long bike trips before, who wants to get started on their first bike trip to really put in the serious miles? So what do we have to do to get our minds, bodies, and bikes right to have a successful long bike trip? So thing number one is physically preparing yourself for the bike trip. So look, I'm not trying to fat shame or body shame anybody, but riding motorcycles, what most people don't know if you don't ride, is actually a very, very physical thing. Especially if you plan on being on the bike all day, literally all day. Well, what does that take? Well, that takes strength for you to keep your arms up. That takes mobility in your wrists. That takes core strength for you to sit upright. That takes some flexibility in your legs to have your legs in the same position all day. That takes your body being physically in good shape, or you're gonna burn out after a day or two. So, I mean, fitness for me and nutrition for me, it's a lifestyle, right? That's part of the lifestyle I live. That I prioritize fitness in my life. I prioritize nutrition in my life. I always have. And that's regardless of what I was doing, whether I was a CrossFit athlete, or whether I was powerlifting, or whether I was training jiu-jitsu, or whether I'm just doing what I do now, which is just running. I'm really just running right now, which has its own downsides, which we could talk about in a separate video. But what I'm saying is I've always done something, regardless of what it was, to keep my body right and to keep my body in good condition. And that's always paid off on my bike trips. Because even on the 700-mile days, I'm never getting off my bike and feeling like my body is destroyed from putting in that type of day. I'm always okay. But the thing is, with these long miles and putting in these serious miles, those people who are putting in the real miles are usually in pretty good shape. If you're not in good shape, you're probably going to run into issues after mile, I don't know, 300, 400. Something's going to start hurting you, whether it's your back or your shoulders, your legs, or what have you. So what does that mean? You want to do the bike trip? Maybe you're not in the best shape right now. That's okay. You say you want to do the bike trip, you're in a position like my dad, for example, where he's, the last year or two has been extremely stressful for him, so health and fitness has not been a priority. But he decided that he wanted to do the real miles this year and do the bike trip. Once that switch had flipped in his mind, he went into full-on beast mode. He's in the gym every day, 4 a.m., straight crushing it. Even if that means he just walks 4 or 5 miles on the treadmill, he is straight crushing it. And his motivation is that he knows we're going to be putting in long miles. We're not pulling any punches, and he knows that that's the situation we're going to be in on the road. So he wants to make sure that his body is able to do it and do it efficiently. So at this point, I'm super proud of my dad. He just lost 30 pounds. And again, his motivation was to do the bike trip. So if you're someone that maybe you're not in the best shape right now, and you are thinking about doing a long bike trip, let that be the motivation to get yourself in better shape. Because again, the long miles are very, very physically taxing. And if you're someone that hasn't put in like a 700-mile day, you're gonna find out real fast that you gotta be in pretty good shape to handle that type of mileage day after day. The second thing is you want to also consider your mental conditioning. You need serious mental toughness to get through what some of those days are going to throw at you. I mean, I always say, I've never had a memorable bike trip when something hasn't gone seriously wrong. Things going wrong is part of the bike trip. That's what makes the bike trip. So if you're someone who flies off the handle and you can't control your emotions when the going gets tough, when things go wrong, when the breakdowns happen, when the weather turns on you, when you're stuck on the side of the road and you can't get a motel for the night, then the long miles are not for you, because you're gonna find out real fast your bike's gonna break, things are gonna go wrong. There's gonna be moments on the bike trip where you are absolutely miserable. But when you complete the bike trip, that's what sets you apart from other riders, because you put in the real miles, you paid the iron price, and you got through those moments. I have so many of those hard moments etched into my mind, and I'm proud of them. Like, those are the trophies when you come home at the end of the day, right? So it's one thing to just say, hey, you need to have mental toughness, right? You need to be mentally strong, right? And not to propose any strategies or ways to make that happen, right? So for me personally, I am someone who very much believes in mindfulness practice, right? I meditate 40 minutes a day, and that's just focusing on my breathing. That's just putting a pause to the day to get my breathing under control, to break it up, right? To take a moment to collect myself. And that's one way that you could develop some mental toughness and have a little bit of mental flexibility when things do go wrong on the road. So mindfulness practice, there's all types of different meditations out there that you can try. That's one thing. Yoga is a good one. You know, that's one that I've been kind of sleeping on ever since I've just been focusing on running lately. But I recently started doing my yoga again, which is really good for maintaining strength, but it's also really good for your mind as well. It's a great breathing practice, right? Another one to strengthen your mental toughness, and this is a given, is just prioritizing your sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, for me, it's got to be 8+ hours, right? If you're not getting that sleep, then when things go wrong, you are not going to be at your sharpest, right? And that's definitely going to deteriorate your mental toughness. And then it kind of also just loops back to number one, which is get exercise. That's another way that you're going to be releasing chemicals that's going to make you mentally stronger. So exercise and fitness, going back to number one, is a way for you to mentally condition yourself to put in some hard days, because you're putting yourself in challenging situations, which again, those of us who are into this type of riding, that's what makes it special, because you're accomplishing something. And again, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. You know, if you're a more casual rider, if you just like to do your, 100-mile days or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that either. You don't have to do this type of riding. But if it's something that you're trying out, you definitely want to make sure your mind is right. And that also means that when you are leaving on your bike trip, you want to make sure that you have minimal stressors happening in your life, right? So if you plan on ending a long-term relationship or something like that, or you are having some turmoil in some aspect of your life, you may think it's a good time to get on the road and do the bike trip to clear your head, but it actually isn't. Those mental stressors that you're dealing with is going to affect your riding. It's going to affect your trip. So you want to make sure that you plan your trip at a place where your mind is like a peaceful lake. You don't have too many stressors. Your work life is straight. Your relationship life is straight. Your family life is straight. Everything is as clear and cool as it possibly can be, so you could focus on what's important, which is those miles and keeping yourself safe. The third thing that is obviously really important is, number one, you want to know your bike very well. So if you're someone that's never put in a long mileage day, say, I would say at least 400 miles. If you've never done that on your bike, you don't want to do that for the first time on a long bike trip, right? Because you're going to learn a lot of things really quickly about your bike setup. So you don't want the first day of your bike trip to be the day that you find out that your bar setup is actually really not that comfortable. So make sure your bike is dialed in. Make sure you know your bike very well. Do what I'm doing right now. Like, you probably are asking where I am. I'm crossing New Hampshire right now, about 40 miles away from Portland, Maine. Why am I doing this? Well, I want to make sure that my bike is as comfortable as it can be, so I can make some little tweaks before I actually start the trip. And you want to do the same for your first bike trip as well. And now that also means making sure that just as your body and your mind is ready to do the trip, you want to make sure your bike is in tip-top shape. You know, you don't want to, obviously, don't make any big changes to the bike before you do the trip. Make sure everything is dialed into a T. Do your service, even if you don't need it. Change your tires, even if you don't need it. Just like me, like I could probably get away without changing the chain and the sprocket, but just that little voice in the back of my mind that's going to be questioning after, 5,000 miles, should I have done it? Yeah, I'm going to do it because it's worth it for me having the state of mind that if something does break down on the bike, that I did everything I possibly could to prepare the bike to be abused, then it is what it is. So just like you're preparing your mind and your body, you got to prepare your bike as well. And then I think the fourth thing to take into consideration is make sure your gear is dialed in. So again, I'm doing this trip, and I know right now from, doing the however many thousand miles I'm doing right now on this mini bike trip that I'm kind of just doing as a joyride. But I know from doing this that, yeah, I probably don't want to run this Simpson Ghost Bandit on the trip because it's not going to be comfortable at the high speeds, right? It also let me know that I need new rain gear, right? I was riding through the rain and my legs got soaked. I don't want to find those things out while I am in the middle of my trip, right? So you want to make sure your gear is correct. Make sure whatever bags you're running are realistic, that you have enough space, especially if you think you're gonna buy a bunch of t-shirts or stuff like that, you're trying to bring stuff back home. Take into consideration what space you might need in your bag. Do you have the gear that you're gonna need when things go wrong? Make sure your gear is dialed in before you leave on the trip. And again, it's right now it's about 80 degrees. I feel amazing in this jacket, right? This jacket feels great, 100% coming with me on the trip. But I also know that there's been a bunch of heat waves in the West. So what that means is I'm also going to be packing my riding shirt for the days where it's above 90 degrees, right? So you want to have that gear dialed in. These jeans, the first MFG Boulevards, absolutely love them. They've been phenomenal on this mini bike trip I'm doing up in New England. I know they're going to perform well on the bike trip. But again, this is not things that I'm finding out as I am on the road of my main trip. These are things that I'm getting dialed in before I leave the road. And then finally, number 5, this is more if you are doing a trip like this for the first time, but you want to do it, you want to choose whoever you do it with very wisely. So I don't think you should do it alone if it's your first big trip. There's something romantic and there's something cool about doing that. I think you should do it with someone who has done it before, right? So for me, the first time I did a really long bike trip, for me, my first one was going cross country and back, hitting Yellowstone, hitting Sturgis. I did that with my dad, who had been doing trips like this since I was a kid. So he had the experience on the long road that I had not experienced myself. So he was a really good candidate to do that first trip with. So again, you probably want to have someone with you who has some long mile experience before you leave for your first main trip. But look, I hope that is helpful for you all. I am super excited to get back on the long road. this summer. I'm excited right now to even just be doing this little mini trip. This has been a blast. New England's a beautiful state, man. But I, again, encourage everyone to at least try the long mile life. Put in the real miles at least one time. Leave the tri-state area at least one time on your motorcycle before you decide that it's not for you. Because I think it's the type of thing where it's like, give it a try, you know, and if it's not for you, that's okay. It's not for you. Not everyone has different riding styles, right? But I think everyone, just like moto camping, should at least try it one time. Because for me personally, it is my riding style. It's pretty much, I live for these bike trips. This is like a lifestyle for me. And I just want to share that joy with the rest of you all, because there's no better way to see this beautiful country, man. But on that, I will see you on the long road. Get those miles this summer. Get your mind right. Get your body right. Get your gear right. Get your bike right. Get your crew right. And I will see you on the road. And on that, stay safe, stay low, practice a positive mental attitude, especially when things go wrong. Listen to the bad brains. And on that, FXDLS Brooklyn.